Monday on the Just Baseball Show. It is Monday, November 22nd. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton. I just got done watching Pedro Severino 2019 Baltimore Orioles highlights. What have you done with your Sunday night?
Not that actually. I was watching football. This is like a role reversal here.
Dork.
I was watching that Steelers Chargers game. I was going against Austin Eckler in fantasy. So safe to say, blew my 30-point lead. I was feeling pretty comfortable. And so now I just get to record a disappointed podcast.
How about this? I had Jonathan Taylor on my fantasy team, and I still lost by 40.
Yeah, is that the one in the Just Baseball League?
It's not. It's a different league. No offense, but that's actually the one that I take most serious. The one in the other league.
It's the classic. I'm doing bad in this league, so I take the other one more seriously. I take the ones I do better in seriously too.
Here's the thing. I was on like a 5-game win streak, I think.
You went all college guys.
I went all college guys, and it worked out for a little bit. Jamar Chase hit. Devontae Smith hit.
I know everybody's a college guy, obviously, in the NFL, but you went with like the college known guys, like the patented college guys. And Jonathan Taylor, patented college guy, but he's a baller.
2,000-yard rusher or 3,000-yard rusher at Wisconsin. So he was hanging.
Do it again.
Might do it again in one season.
Yeah.
We're going to talk, not really Pedro Severino. I thought that was an interesting pickup. We're going to save a lot of the Rule 5 conversation because you had roster protections. There were some guys who were left off 40-mans that was very weird. What's the plural of 40-man? Is it 40-man roster, like 40 mans, or is it 40 men?
40 mans. I think technically speaking, it would be 40 mans because it's the roster itself is the 40-man roster. Yeah. And you can't change what it's called. You can't make it the 40-man roster.
Right. And that, it's like its own separate entity. So you've got
It's like a proper noun, I think.
I think so.
So you can't change it.
But here's my thing, go to a leading communication school in America and don't let anybody forget it. Syracuse, the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications, top flight. Listen, I have no idea when to use persons versus people. And I feel like it's one
That's
of those.
I thought that was like an optional thing.
Maybe, like, is persons just meant to sound educated?
Well, the only time I see persons in a context is like when you're walking in a building and it's like no more than 56 persons in this building, like with the sign for the fire hazard.
But why can't you just say people?
I agree. I don't know. See, and also I've never brought up the Syracuse thing on here. You just did. Yeah. So we're going to tally that on the side. That's just fine. How many Newhouse douchebag plugs one of us brings up.
Totally.
There's one.
That's fine. You know what? While we're at it, shout out Roy Terry, who was the did you have him, the professor?
Oh, I had Roy Terry. I think I failed every test. But great professor. Just super hard. It's not his fault that English is the hardest language when you really get into the weeds. It's impossible.
Oh my God. Like French actually had a formula. When I was studying that, like middle school, high school, and college, like French made sense. Right? It was, here's how you conjugate. Here's how, words are structured in the past tense. And then we've got weird O-U-G-H-T, which just sounds like A-T sometimes. Like it doesn't make any sense. But let's talk about baseball. You wrote a great article that is available on justbaseball.com that is a deep dive into the dysfunction of the Colorado Rockies. And this is something that we've always just said and taken as law, right? Like, oh, the Rockies are idiots.
Yes.
You said, here's why the Rockies are idiots. And you almost laid out a timeline of their idiocy. And it was pretty awesome to read and just like almost quantify everything we're saying qualitatively about them.
Yeah. What really prompted me to do it was what we saw with the Story and Gray situation where, with John Gray, they could have traded him at the deadline. We saw what arms were fetching. Was John Gray going to get you 2 top 50 prospects? No, but he could have got you some quality prospects. No doubt about it. And they decide, we'll hold on to him. He said he wants to sign an extension, so we'll try to extend him. And they go into that off season, all right, going into it. There's 1 week left in the season. That's when they make the offer. So they had that exclusive negotiating window. Don't use it. And without rehashing the whole story, that was something that just kind of got me going. And then I'm thinking Trevor's story. I'm like, there's no way that they couldn't field a better offer than a comp pick. I just don't. I don't believe that, even if Story was having a bad year. So when I looked at those two things, I was like, I want to see where this all started and how long this has been going on, and started thinking about Arenado and the way that was handled.
That was a terrible deal.
You don't realize how bad the situation was. I knew the deal was bad, but the whole situation, the way they really handled it, it was just like almost self-sabotage. But that trade in itself, there's so many things wrong with it. But it's almost as if I was like, maybe they know something I don't. I looked at it from every angle possible, and I was like, no, they really are that inept. And I always think that it can't be possible, right? There's professionals in that role, but they're capable of making mistakes that catastrophic. It's amazing.
I don't really understand how that stuff all unfolded. And hopefully you can shed a little bit more light on this, because like the Nolan Arenado deal, I remember, oh, okay, Arenado's on the market. Like he's going to get a top 10 prospect in baseball. And you've got Liberator and Gorman that are still sitting here in the Cardinals system. And it's like no deal for a top 5 player in baseball at the time, Coors bump or not, should not be getting Liberator and Gorman in return, right? Like you need to get 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 in a system if you're giving up the best third baseman in baseball at the time of the deal. And that's what the Cardinals got away with. I mean, they got away with highway robbery for Nolan Arenado. And, you're thinking there's got to be this weird catch, right? Like maybe he actually is just a Coors merchant, right? And he's not going to hit 30 bombs. Oh, wait. He's not going to be in contention for a platinum glove. Oh, wait. He's not going to like nothing dropped off when he went to Busch. Like Nolan Arenado is still an exceptional baseball player, and you can make the argument for top 10 player in baseball. And they got almost nothing in return from St. Louis. And then just going back to Story and Gray real quick, you're right. Like Story, they could have gotten a top 50 prospect in baseball at the very least. If it was just a one-on-one, they could have gotten 2 top 100 guys for Trevor Story at the deadline, because it was a seller's market this year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and you get a comp pick for him. And then John Gray, you don't even get a comp pick because you don't extend him the qualifying offer. Like
that's the craziest part.
There are so many weird parts of how they function with so many deals that is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, you laid it out perfectly, because I'll get into the Arenado thing in a second, because there's some really confusing aspects to it where I'm just like even more just lost in whatever rationale they attempted to apply there. But the really crazy thing with Gray is they had that exclusive negotiating window throughout the rest of the season after the deadline. You could get a really good pulse at that point, if he's going to maybe sign a deal with you or not. Obviously, it's too late to trade him at that point, but you would have a good idea as to whether your offer would be in the ballpark of a QO and what would happen. They make him an offer, he turns it down immediately. It was about $10 to $12 million a year over a few years, I think. Then they're like, oh, well, we're not going to offer him the QO, because if he accepts that, now we have to pay him that for a year. Who cares if he accepts that? You get another chance to now trade him at the deadline again and redo what you messed up last time. And yes, you would have to pay him $18 million, but that's the going rate for a decent pitcher. But we know that's the big holdup there was they didn't want to offer him the QO in the off chance that he takes the QO and they have to pay him market value for him. Like that's the craziest part. Maybe it's a little above market value, but I think for them relatively, you have a guy that pitches better in Coors. That's so rare. You take that guy and he's worth 18 million to you. So that was crazy to me. The Arenado thing, a big reason why the trade was so bad was because they had no leverage. They had a player option in that deal, right? Arenado just decided right now if he was going to opt out or not. He didn't opt out. That was a big reason why the package wasn't as good, is because they're like, oh, well, we can be a free agent next year. Then what are we going to do? And the craziest part about that is the more I did research and the more I dug into it, I found out that it was actually the Rockies who encouraged him to have the no trade clause. He didn't even ask for it.
Like, why?
He didn't even ask for it. And according to it just blows my mind. He's like, yes, we want you. We want you to have the no trade clause. The former GM, Jeff Bridich, he said basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but the quote's in the article somewhere, like, we want to give him the opportunity. If he doesn't want to be here, then he can leave. And that's why I encouraged him to have it in there. We only want people that want to be here. And I was just like, that in itself is like a very, very powerful undertone of like, I don't really want this guy here. Like, there was clearly a rift between the two. And it was just bizarre, even in an extension, something that should be exciting and celebrated. There's still this undertone of like, can't wait to get you out of here. And it's just really bizarre. And that was a big reason why the package sucked. I want to hear what you have to say. And then I'm going to go into specifics on the money of the package, which blows my freaking mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the deal with that thought, with that thinking from the Rockies front office. I don't know why the Astros has popped in my mind here, but my thing on that is you are negotiating that deal in the late 2010s, right? Like that came about in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, maybe a little before that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was 2019. It was early 2019.
It was early 2019. In early 2019, the thinking had already shifted. We are fully enveloped in the thinking now that I'm about to lay out, but the thinking had already shifted to this in large part. There are sharks and there are dolphins. Dolphins do not survive. And the Rockies are made up of dolphins. Everybody else is a great white shark, where if you don't want them here, you get rid of them. If the Rockies don't want Nolan Arenado's service, if they want to ditch him, you sell him for anything. You make it clear it's the Sixers Ben Simmons thing, right?
Yep.
Like, he can play for us, but we don't want him. He doesn't factor in here. I mean, Joel Embiid came out and said, I don't concern myself with Ben Simmons anymore. Like, nobody is trying to pussyfoot around everybody else, right? Like, they're all looking out for, themselves. That's how this should work. That's how the business of sports should work. There is too much money not to think about yourself first. And the Rockies obviously were trying to be nice to a guy that they didn't see in their future plans. Like, don't do that. Just trade him.
Yeah.
And if you did that, if you cut the bullshit, you could get a lot more.
Well, and the bullshit was what ended up pissing Nolan Arenado off. It was the false promises is what the reports were. And actually the more I heard about it too, it was the, we're going to spend, which is what they told him when they signed, when he signed the extension. And then they let DJ LeMahieu go. And then they let, a few other guys go, and they don't have a farm system. And the craziest part is they let LeMahieu go for 2 years, $24 million is what he signed for with the Yankees.
Yeah.
They replace him. And not that he fills in the exact position, but that he essentially replaces him in the lineup and with the same role, basically, with 3 years, $24 million for freaking Murphy, bro. Like
Daniel Murphy, who has serious character flaws that everybody was aware of at the time of signing. I mean, obviously you remember when he stood on his head with the Mets in the 2015 NLCS, but like, here's the thing about Daniel Murphy. It was on record before he did that he legitimately said, I don't have a problem with gay people. They're just less of human beings than I think straight people are. Like a full.
I don't even mean to laugh. It's just the most absurd.
It's just like, how do you sign somebody who says that? Like, why are they touchable? Right.
Well, and that's a guy that you replaced DJ LeMahieu with.
Who's a leader.
Yeah. Even though he wasn't Yankees DJ yet, he was still really darn good. And they said after, like, oh yeah, we shouldn't have let DJ walk. Wish we could do that over again.
No shit.
Yeah.
No shit.
So that was the crazy one to me. But to the package with Arenado, this is the craziest part. Is yes, they lost the leverage, which at that point you're like, okay, it's kind of like the Mookie Betts situation, let's say, but a little bit different, where everyone just knows he's gone, and even though he's a superstar, you're just not quite going to get market value. You're going to probably get 60 cents on the dollar. Like, that's the general expectation. They got zero, actually not even a penny on the dollar, because they end up kicking in 50 million, and it's deferred. And I'm sure there's some like a bunch of different aspects to it, but they're paying a decent chunk over the next 2 years of Nolan Arenado's contract just to maximize their prospect return. So I, in theory, don't mind that if that got them Gorman and Liberatore, like if that's what they had to do, in theory, I don't hate it. They did that to get a package of mediocre to subpar prospects. That's the craziest freaking part to me. Is like you traded and added $51 million for a package that wasn't worth $51 million. Like if it was just 50 million, like forget Arenado for a second, you can have these prospects, these 4 prospects for 50 million. I'd say no. I wouldn't give up more than 15 million for those prospects. Like in terms of signing, international free agent, let's pretend they are. None of them are worth more than a couple million each, maximum. And I don't even think they're worth that. So what are the Rockies thinking here? Like what are they doing? That's the craziest part to me.
Man, I just got sidetracked with the Daniel Murphy thing. I mean, like, I agree with you. The structure was weird. The return was weird. Let me clarify what this is because I just got down this rabbit hole again. So, I believe it was like 2014. Major League Baseball hired Billy Beane, not with an E, a different Billy Beane, former Major League Baseball player, openly gay, as an ambassador for inclusion. Daniel Murphy said after meeting with Billy Beane, quote, "I disagree with his lifestyle. I do disagree with the fact he is homosexual." And the Rockies signed him for 3 years, $24 million. I mean, like, what? How do you do that? How do you do that? They are just so inept. And the return for Arenado was nothing like what it should be. And the conversation with Arenado was nothing like it should be. But the reality is Arenado is one of the very few that has made it through this gauntlet and what feels like the inevitable downfall of the Rockies minor league system. And I know you wrote about that. I mean, it's a graveyard. Riley Pint,
Literally.
he was the one that jumped out. I was sitting there in Fort Wayne getting ready for a Tin Caps game, and I got an alert from the Athletic, former top 10 pick Riley Pint retires from baseball. I was like, oh my God, Riley Pint. But there are a lot that have retired from baseball in the Rockies system.
Three of their last 6 first-round picks have retired. And, knowing guys in pro ball now and just knowing how much the state of the org impacts their desire to play, like flat out, really shows me, how much I think the Rockies played a part in those guys' careers. I'm not saying that it's solely the Rockies' fault. I think Riley Pint obviously had a lot of mechanical issues to sort out and had a lot of areas where he needed to improve. But I think there's a level of like, I'm never going to figure this out in this organization. And I think a lot of those guys, they just lost the love for it because they had no hope, no faith, because the Rockies weren't doing anything to develop talent. And when you have 3 of your 6 first-round picks retire, there's something going on within your org because that just doesn't happen. Them. You have first-round picks from, Matt Bush is still playing baseball. Like, guys don't want to give it up. They don't just give it up in a couple of years. You'll have one guy here or there because it's a very individual thing, and some don't want to deal. And Mark Appel's still kicking it. Like, they don't want to just give it up. It's baseball. We love it. We're going to keep going until we can, even if we know that we're not going to be nearly as good as we're supposed to be. But those guys who just said, fuck it, I'm done.
You're chasing this dream that your entire life you have strived for. And the reality is, yes, Riley Pint, I was watching in that Under Armour All-America game at Wrigley Field going into his senior year of high school. And yes, he was 102, but he couldn't throw a strike to save his life. I mean, It was eye high every time. So you saw this and you said, okay, I mean, it's 102 from a 17-year-old, but he can't throw a strike. But a lot of these other guys, like, Ryan Rollison should be up. In any other organization, he should be
He fell on his face. He fell on his face this year.
It's just but I'm slow to blame it on Ryan Rollison.
Oh, no, at this point, I think it's not him because he actually showed a lot. When you get to that point, you're like encroaching on the big leagues. Like, you need help to tweak those little things and to get the most out of your stuff. And that's where all the analytics come in and teams that invest in that type of thing. The Rockies, who was it that said this? I think it was Bill Schmidt right after he got hired in a response to analytics in general. He's like, yeah, we want to get back to some of that. It's like, get back to some of that.
Get back to what?
Like using some of those analytics things. Like that's where it's scary. Cause I know like we talk about the balance of analytics and everything, but if you're running your team and you don't have a prominent analytics department, you can decide how much you want to apply that into the individual aspects of the game. But when it comes to developing players, it's unanimous. You need that information. You need those analytics. You need all of that stuff. It's at this point, it's like a lobotomy versus like antidepressants. Like that's how polarizing it is to me, because you just can't treat players and get more out of their stuff and get more out of what they're doing without using that stuff at this point with how much everybody else knows.
I in terms of scouting, in terms of player development, in terms of personnel in a front office, I think there should be a 1-to-1 ratio of major leaguers to Ivy leaguers. That's how I'll put it. Right.
Yeah.
I just
think it's perfect.
That's the way that people should be functioning.
Well, and here's a perfect way to put it. Well, because also you get those Ivy leaguers and those baseball players together, and those guys actually work together like they do. If they can
have a civil conversation,
which is what happens in those orgs. That's what happens in those orgs. They have those conversations, and then they find a middle ground, which is usually a higher confidence interval in the right answer. And I think what sums it up the best with the Rockies is when the Rockies minor league affiliate plays the Dodgers minor league affiliate, I would venture to say that the Dodgers organization or, the analytics department knows more about those Rockies prospects than the Rockies, whatever department knows about their own prospects. And I think that's, and how can you expect those guys to succeed? Because they're attacking them, knowing their weaknesses, and the Rockies organization probably doesn't even know what those weaknesses are to work on and how to apply that. And their hitting coordinator probably doesn't even use any of that. Like that's what I'm hearing. And that's the scariest part. But when you're kicking in the 50 million for a prospect, a return that's worth about 10, those are the things that to me is just, they're just kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And yeah, the story was fun to write because we're just scratching the surface. There's about a million other things. The Michael Givens trade to then trade him was another one that I really loved. You're below 500. You're a terrible team. And you're like, let's go get that 30-year-old reliever. They gave up Taran Varva and they gave up Tyler Nevin. Two guys that are solid prospects that damn well they could use, which is actually more than they're going to get for Trevor Story. and then they flip Michael Givens a year later for less. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I can't even explain it.
I mean, Tyler Nevin, Taran Vavra both just got protected by the Orioles, right? In their 40-man ahead of the Rule
there you go.
Draft.
I mean, that does.
Those are two guys on the 40-man that you should have in
Yes.
place of a guy who's not, like really anything anymore.
A reliever.
At the time.
He was a fine reliever. Even
like
if he was the best reliever in baseball.
But like Vavra is like the fourth infielder for the Orioles for the next 7 years. Like he is
might
mainstay.
Start too. Like he could be a starter. Like he's a fringe starter. I honestly think like he's been hurt. He can hit. He can just hit. I see him being almost like a Louis Guillorme type.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as prolific with the glove, but a little bit better of a hitter. Like you're getting that. I mean, screw it, man. That guy is more valuable to a team that's rebuilding than anybody else. And Nevin can swing it. I mean, if something clicks for him, I mean, like you said, they protected him, and that's a system that's really good. It's a decent active roster now with some of the talent they have. Those are two guys that they're like, hey, we think they might turn into big leaguers. If not, those are two really good bench pieces, and they're young and controllable and they're cheap. And the Orioles are thrilled about it. I promise you they are.
Yeah, Louis Guillorme. I like that comp. You know how much I love the fringe starter in the middle infield, Mauricio Dubon. That's my guy. Mauricio Dubon types and college guys. Those are my people. You just sent the name Lucan Baker in a group text, and I was like, yeah, college guy. Yeah,
he's going to go in the Rule 5.
Player of the year. Yeah, damn. I mean, that dude, he was so unathletic at TCU, but he was just like the classic big guy who would just run into some balls and didn't wear batting gloves. He was just good country boy.
I love it. He rakes. He absolutely rakes.
He does. He can't do much of anything else, but he rakes.
Seth Beer-esque. I like it though. I like those guys too. And with the NL, but with the NL acquiring a DH most likely, I think Lucan Baker is going to be one of the first names off the board in the Rule 5. So
he could.
This is going to kind of tease Wednesday's episode. This is going to be one of the most talented Rule 5 drafts maybe ever, because no 2020 season. So when you have no minor league season, development's delayed. Yeah, development's delayed. So yeah, you essentially have two prospect classes in this. there's a lot of talent to be had here. Like usually it's like, oh yeah, the Rule 5, it's you're throwing a dart. I'll venture to say that at least 3 or 4 guys in this Rule 5 will have an impact on a big league team next year that will actually
Absolutely.
notice. We'll be like, whoa, that guy was Rule 5.
Yep.
And that's what's cool. I actually, it's one of my favorite things about baseball because it is a slight hedge of a terrible control system we talk about with players, right? Where, they have control of guys for 6 years and sometimes they can just stash guys in the minors and whatever it is. Like it's a better, slightly good hedge of the delaying the clock. Obviously it doesn't do enough, but it is one of the reasons why I love the Rule 5. It's like, okay, if you don't value this guy enough, then, someone else will. And if they don't, then you're right to not value him that much. It's like perfect. It's like setting the market value. So I'm a big fan of it. I'm looking forward to talking about it on Wednesday.
Totally. Let's wrap talking about this article that I read in The Athletic last week, and I texted you and I said, we have to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about it too. It was about PitchCom, and it was developed by a pair of mentalists who, recommendation, if you have Hulu, Derek Delgadio's in and of itself on Hulu. Derek Delgadio is a mentalist magician type, and I have no idea how to describe the programming. It's about an hour 15, and it is one of the deepest and craziest things I've ever seen. I'd call it a performance. He performed, he had a live audience in New York. He did it like 200, 300 times at a playhouse of sorts. It was a small theater, and it was almost like a mentalist performance or a magician performance. But this PitchCom was developed by 2 mentalists, and the premise is you've got the catcher who wears like a wristband type, maybe even smaller than that, and you've got the pitcher wearing a band around their hat, and the catcher can punch one of 9 buttons that will be pitch type, and then he can punch another of the 9 buttons that will be pitch location. So he just looks down to his wrist, he hits these 2 buttons, and then either English or Spanish or any other language that the pitcher speaks, that band will say to them, fastball low and away, or curveball low and inside. And that, they believe, and Major League Baseball believes, is the future of signage from pitchers to catchers and vice versa, so as to prevent the sign stealing. It was a fascinating concept, and I think you and I both just had our heads spin for a little bit after reading it.
Yeah, I think it's a smart idea. Like I tip of the cap to those guys.
Do you?
I think it's an intelligent thought. Is that a better way of putting it? Like
yes,
they were creative, innovative, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's practical, right? And that's where I draw the line. Is for me, if I click a button and then I click another button to tell you what's going on, and then you shake me off, and I got to click another button and another button, then you shake me off, which happens plenty of times. So we shake off 2 pitches
times
all the time. Like I might hit the wrong thing at that point. I think you're going to get crossed up way more in this situation.
Yeah.
Because it's just there's a level of, yes, you want to hide the signs from the other team, but there has to be a little bit of a demonstrative nature of your signs to almost be on this same human component dating back to like cavemen biological date, like the basic human aspect. You and I making signals to each other, you can kind of get body language and know if you're on the same page. If I'm clicking a button and then I get nothing from you, like I'm not going to know if we're on the same page. I can tell by the way you're looking at my signs if I think, oh wait, he might not be seeing me right. Like that's when they usually call time and they go out there. I just don't know if I could get behind that as a catcher. I'd be very stressed about getting crossed up. And as a pitcher, I definitely don't want some shit in my ears and on my head. Like I don't think that the sign stealing is that much of an issue that we have to go through this kind of crazy change for what? It's not like some crazy thing that's debilitating baseball. If this was a sticky substance solution, it'd probably be more important than sign stealing. I just don't think it's an issue.
And it would be fast tracked. And this is still kind of being fast tracked. Major League Baseball implemented it in the second half of the year in Low A West. And a lot of the people in Low A West that were using it had some positive things to say about it. They had a lot less fear that their signs were being stolen with a runner at second base. The con was that it was slowing the game down and the pitch clock being apparent as well. It was always a race against the pitch clock. So the only time that this really speeds the game up is when there's a runner at second base and you got to go through the sign sequence if you're a catcher. If there's nobody on or there's a runner at first, you can just drop a sign down and move to your spot. And that's that. And the only people that are taking those signs are the ones that are banging on trash cans or the ones that are shining strobe lights from center field. It was Ryan Spader that just sent out a bunch of like claims with absolutely zero credibility midway through this season, right? He was just
Yeah.
like Adrian Beltre had a guy waving a shirt or something in
Yeah,
center
that was
field when a breaking
nuts.
ball was coming. That was bizarre. Like that felt
And then
really
he's just
weird to
like,
me.
I'm sorry. And this was the
Yeah,
worst decision I ever made. We're just like, yeah, that we said it the second he put that out there. We're like, oh, that's not a good idea.
right. It's just like you can say these things, but just know you're gonna get sued. Like
Yeah.
seriously, seriously sued. And I think he had some. I think he had some people come to him and say, "Where's your empirical evidence?"
Yep.
And he said, "I've talked to people, and they
Yeah,
said,
some guy.
okay,
Some
you're
guy
gonna
told me.
lose. Right, you're gonna lose millions of dollars."
Yeah.
Um, just don't for everybody listening out there that was thinking about making this bold, harsh claim, don't do it unless you can totally back it up. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
No matter how much you trust the person who told it to you.
yeah, you got to be able to back this shit up, especially when you're dealing with millionaires. Um, I mean, like talking about Adrian Beltre, like a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, saying that he
all-time
had a
good
guy
guy.
waving a t-shirt, like watch the video. Okay, maybe he was just a fan waving a t-shirt. I don't know. That was a problem. But yeah, this is called PitchCom. PITCHCOM. It was implemented in Low A West. Some people had some good things to say about it. I think Low A was also the one using the robotic ump for a little bit as well.
Yeah, which is a
Um,
disaster also.
yeah, I mean it's all kind of a disaster. What I did like is there was almost this it not fact checking, but there was this quality control aspect from the managers who had an iPad in the dugout and they would like tap in whenever they thought that a robotic strike call was too high, like this
Mhm.
missed. And they adjusted the strike zone from there. So they expanded it horizontally, they shrunk it vertically. And I appreciate that there is some feedback from human beings during this process. PitchCom, just close your eyes and let me paint you this picture here. You've got Siri telling you on the mound, blow it by him, gas this motherfucker up. Like, how does that get you amped?
Oh,
Like
that's sick. That's
that's what
sick.
it sounds like, right? Like that is
Uh,
2025 in Major League Baseball.
well, it's just gonna say fastball, and then you just, yeah, all right.
Low
Then
and away.
if you say no, and then we got to wait for you to click another one, and then I got to hear curveball, and you say
What if
no.
you're
You
having
have
what
to
if
click
you're
another
only
one, slider, and then all right. That was
what
like a
if you have
15-second
like
ordeal.
God, I mean, talk to me about like one bar of LTE, right? I'm having trouble understanding.
Oh, yeah, and like, what if there's issues at that point? Like, there's going to be technological issues, and then
Yes.
when that happens, then they go back to regular signs, and it's like, all right, we're back to square one, anyways. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
just a crazy concept to me. Just change your signs up a little bit. It's baseball, man. It's not that bad. It's not that hard. It's
Man.
not it's not that devastating. It's just change your signs up a little bit. I also don't get why they don't have a second set of signs already established for when there's a guy on second base. Like, when there's a guy on second base, we will do this. When there's not a guy on second base, we stick with this. Like, why every time it's like, oh, we had no idea that somebody was going to go to second base. Now we got to act like
Yeah.
we got
Mound
to sort
doesn't.
this out. No way. Someone made it to second. Let's go change the signs. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to happen. Someone's going to go to second, no matter how good you think you are on the mound. Have a plan for it. I don't need to have it be time every single time somebody hits a double. It's just miserable. It's miserable.
Purely idiotic. I'm really looking forward to hearing this Rule 5 conversation that you're going to have on Wednesday. I was on episode 1 with you, the prospects episode. Peter was on episode 2. think you might have to bring a new guest in for episode 3. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe an informed prospect discussion with somebody on the Just Baseball staff. We shall see. Peter and I talking about a whole laundry list of things for tomorrow's episode, including Noah Syndergaard absolutely lighting into Mike Francesa, which I'm sure
which is so funny because we were just talking about Mikey the other day. Yeah. Peter's a big fan, so I'm excited to hear about that.
I just keyed Peter into Mike Francesa not knowing who Dino Babers was, the head coach of Syracuse football. Somebody called in and said, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about the job Dino Babers is doing at Syracuse?" And Mike was like, that's a fake name. Why are you calling him with a fake name? Get out of here.
Don't waste my time.
Don't waste my time. That's a fake name. Yeah, him and the Mad Dog, they are the Godfathers. They were the first.
The Godfathers are just being really mean to their callers. Don't you realize that's somebody that freaking is listening? He's listening to your show, bro. Even if you don't like what he's saying, he's listening to your show. Like, just don't be an ass. It's not that hard. Also, speaking of Syracuse, lost to Colgate, 100-85, 2-3 zone. We will never ever leave it. Even when the other team splashes 18 threes, which was more than half of their total field goals, you stay in the 2-3 zone, and that's why Jim Boeheim is a GOAT. Love
this guy. Tell you what, though, this Colgate coach Langle, he's a high major head coach.
Yeah, let's give Colgate credit, but Syracuse hasn't lost to Colgate since 1962.
Yeah,
Jim Boeheim, it might be time.
Zone's beatable. Yeah, I thought it was indestructible.
You just have to shoot. It's pretty crazy.
It's called the wings. It's called running the baseline, and it's called having a competent passing big
right at the free throw line. Yeah,
right at the free throw line. There are 5 weak spots of the 2-3 zone, and they are so well documented. So,
and then we have the most unathletic team in Syracuse that they've had in a while. So you're running a 2-3 zone with a bunch of dudes that can't move that well, and so now they're not even closing out on shooters. And it's going to be a long season, Jack. It's going to be a long season. All of my teams suck. I have nothing to live for in the sports world.
Except Tyler Hero.
Tyler Hero, you're going to lose that bet.
That's fine. I've got him at under 20 points per game. What's he at right now?
It was 19.5.
Oh, 19.5.
He's averaging 21.
Okay. Yeah, I've still got plenty of time. All right. That's at Aram Layton 8. I'm Jack _McMullen 11 on Twitter. Any other handle or link you need is in the episode description. We will talk to you tomorrow.